and everyone who can hear the message.
Cool. So I'm going to pass it off to Laura Stack from Johnny as Ambassadors, and she's going to explain to us why we're here today.
Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate you asking me to come and talk with you about Johnny's Ambassadors and our mission here to educate parents and teens about the dangers of today's very potent marijuana products. Specifically, we work in adolescent brain development, the development of mental illness in youth, addiction, and sadly, suicide. My son, Johnny, died by suicide 2 years ago in 3 days on November 20th, 2019, after becoming psychotic from using dabs, concentrates here in Colorado. It was a 5-year period that he used marijuana. As you know, Colorado is the first state who legalized recreational marijuana in 2012. Johnny was born in 2000. And so in 2014, when it was commercialized, he was a freshman in high school. And here in Colorado, you at 18 can go to our pot shop docs and pay your $350 typically and become the owner of your medical marijuana card and legally go into our dispensaries and buy shatter and wax and dab and the very potent products, 80, 90, nearly 100% pure THC. And then you go back to your high school and your middle school and you sell them there. So Johnny had a friend whose brother was 18 and the owner of one of these new med cards and went to a high school party and used it. And he told me that he used it, which is not unusual because I was Johnny's person. We were very close. We have 3 kids. We live in South Denver, 30 minutes south in a beautiful suburb. Johnny was handsome, charming, so funny, could just light up the room with his smile. He was very busy, very engaged in activities. He had a green brown belt in karate. He played the piano and the guitar. He ran cross country. He played soccer. We're a Christian family. He loved Jesus. We volunteered for our church for many years. We taught Sunday school as a family, 4-year-olds, one service, and then we'd go to the next service. He was very involved in his youth group. Very intelligent. I'm talking genius level, got a perfect SAT score in the math portion, 800 out of 800, had a 4.0 GPA, and a scholarship to attend Colorado State University. So, you know, he had a wonderful life ahead of him and told me that he had used. And he said, so-and-so's brother had some and we all wanted to try to get high. Now, I must admit that when he said that, in my mind, I said, you know, it's just weed. I used weed when I was a little girl in high school twice. I didn't like it, but it didn't hurt me. You know, I'm fine. And I was so wrong. I had no idea that the products in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s into the early 2000s were very weak, 2 to 5% tetrahydrocannabinol THC concentration, and that the chemists had been very quietly in Colorado creating these concentrated products that hit the market in 2015, about when Johnny was young. And slowly it took my son's mental health. It caused him to become depressed, anxious, defiant, and he had no mental health conditions. We have no psychosis in our family. He was even tested. He has none of the genes for schizophrenia. He was perfectly healthy. I don't know what he told the doctor, but he also, without my knowledge or consent, got a medical marijuana card, which we only discovered after his death, after my friend, who's a cybersecurity expert, helped us hack into all of his devices. So we have his logins for the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, which they protect the doctors. So I can't even sue for wrongful death. We have his phone with his Snapchat showing all the photos that he used to deal his drugs once he became 18 and was selling, like the other 4,000 children who are 18-year-old here in Colorado, who have medical marijuana cards. So 3 days before he died, Johnny came to the house and said, I just want you to know that you were right. And I said, about what? He said, about the marijuana. You told me that it would hurt my brain, and it has, sorry, it's ruined my mind and my life. And I'm sorry, and I love you. And 3 days later, he jumped off the top of a parking garage. And it turns out he had a journal, which we didn't know about. And we found the journal in his apartment after his death. And in it, he had written that the mob was after him, and that the university that we sent him to was an FBI base, and that everybody knew everything about him. And many treatments, mental hospital stays, doctors, medication, psychiatrists, psychologists. I mean, the story is so long. I wrote a 300-page book during COVID because, heck, I had nothing else to do, and had lost my son, and it was very healing for me. I have 8 previous books. I'm an author and a 30-year professional speaker in my previous life before this happened. And so I wrote The Dangerous Truth About Today's Marijuana, Johnny Stack's Life and Death Story. And it's available on Amazon. And I was basically in a fetal position for a few months after that, and the holidays, and then it was COVID, and it was just a really bad time. And I put a post out on Facebook, and I have about 30,000 Twitter followers. And I just said, does anybody know what dabbing is? And put in a couple links, because I didn't even know until he was 18 what dabs were. So uneducated. And I got 20,000 shares on this one Facebook post. It was unbelievable. Now there's 21,000 shares. It's still up. And about 3,000 comments. And most of the comments were, I have no idea what you're talking about, Laura. And that's when Johnny's Ambassadors was born. I decided that if I didn't know this, and I am an educated, worldly person who lives in a legalized state, if I didn't know, that weed isn't just, get a paper, put some flour in, smoke a joint, that probably most people didn't know. And we set out to educate, and created our nonprofit in May of 2020. So we are brand new. We have about 5,000 ambassadors already. We're growing like crazy. And so in a year and a half, we are really working to share Johnny's warning. In June of this year, we passed Colorado House Bill 1317. I led the charge on regulating marijuana concentrates in Colorado. So we are very proud of that. And I am the proud owner of the pen that Governor Polis used to sign the legislation. And so we are really busy here at Johnny's Ambassadors. I, of course, have changed my entire platform now. I'm speaking mostly in schools and coalitions and drug prevention conferences, community events, anywhere anyone will have me, live and in person, talking about Johnny's story. It's still hard to talk about, I usually don't cry. Sometimes I do. It's still pretty recent, just a couple years ago as of Saturday. But I think he's doing some good in this world and keeping his spirit alive. And this is his legacy, and trying to share his warning. So I'll show you what we're doing. If you go to, can you see the website here, David?
Yeah, we can see
It's
it.
showing. Okay. So our website, johnnysambassadors.org. I would love to invite you to avail yourself of all of these resources. Most of everything we do is free or almost free. At our website, under ambassadors, you can learn about Johnny. There's a 7-minute tribute video so that you can just see how wonderful of a person he was. Talks about what we do. Our allied organizations, our major donors who give $2,500 or $420. We call that our anti-420 club. Our board, our memorial wall of other young people who have died by THC outcomes, and also our brand new, we're very excited, certified Johnny's Ambassadors trainer program. We had 190 people register, so we're very excited. It's $299, and it gives you the rights to use our content. As I said, I'm a professional speaker, so I've created PowerPoint, trainer notes, workbooks, videos. There's a parent version and a teen version. They're very different programs because it's a different audience. So we're very excited about that. The Train the Trainer is next month and it launches in January. So we are trying to be like the Mothers Against Drunk Driving for Marijuana. We have to get a giant grassroots army of people out there to help us because there's only one of me and I'm already working about 100 hours a week on this. So I need a lot of people to help put it into their communities, schools, libraries, churches, anywhere anybody will give you space. For you, the main menu will be under education. This is where you can avail yourself of all these resources. You can order my book, talks about my speeches. We have upcoming live events. We list my events. Like I have one coming up in February that will be live streamed that you can bring to your communities. We built an online marijuana curriculum that is awesome. It's for parents, a parallel track for parents, but it's for teens. Targeted to the age of 8th grade and 9th grade. It's 8 modules, and we're trying to get it into a lot of schools and youth groups and boys and girls clubs and youth leadership coalitions. And they're using it now at CODCA for their youth leadership. So that's really exciting. We have a brand new webinar series for teens for your coalitions. This starts in January. So one a month. We have a different speaker who will be presenting. Grab some popcorn in your youth and an auditorium and show our webinars. These are nationally known youth speakers. We have over 75 hours of recordings from marijuana experts all over the world, speaking on various dangers, doctors, chemists, psychiatrists, all sorts of who all work in marijuana. I write a blog every week. You can subscribe to our newsletter. Here we have graphics that we do. I'll show you. So Johnny's warning, these are all free to share. Marijuana facts. We do marijuana trivia for the teens. These are great for Insta. The top 10 teen toking tip-offs, all sorts of marijuana and mental health graphics, book graphics. We have Johnny cartoons. Johnny is back to teach the teens, fact sheets. I mean, just so much more information than you can probably possibly use. Toolkits, videos. We have videos of me presenting, videos from other organizations that we've gathered. We believe we are the best repository of marijuana information in anywhere. I've never seen anybody that has as complete of a website as ours. We have over 100 stories from people who talk about how their child has been impacted with addiction, with mental illness, and sadly suicide. And we have started National Marijuana Facts Week. Last year was the first year. It'll be again this year. And we invite everybody to participate. And we've created activities and game shows and different things that you can post on social. So there's a whole toolkit there. In research, I have summarized probably 400 articles for you. So if you want to know about high THC marijuana, you can go and read my summaries and click to the source document. These are all scientific, peer-reviewed studies because the marijuana industry, of course, puts out their bogus surveys, where they're asking the stoners what their answers are. So they aren't valid, they aren't scientific, and they aren't proper research. So you can go and read about and be educated and be prepared to come back at people when they tell you BS, the effects of THC on youth, what is the impact on the brain, what is the impact on mental illnesses. These are all categorized. The impact on suicide. I have a glossary here, the stories of THC, and you can do a search of our entire research database, as well as summaries that I have written that you're welcome to use, distribute, download. There's just so much here. Our partners, I've gotten a ton of media. I used to do a lot of media for my professional speaking. We were just in People magazine, a 4-page spread on Johnny 2 weeks ago. That was very exciting. Millions of people. We got hundreds and hundreds of contacts, people whose children are using or just need help. I've been in the Epic Times, all kinds of different media, television. We did an ad for Smart Approaches to Marijuana Nebraska. So a ton of media. Our sponsors, the coalitions that we are working with currently, a lot of different partners, our volunteers, our council. We have an advisory council. We have a scientific advisory board, because I'm not a clinician. So these are all of the people who advise our science, including Sir Robin Murray and Marta DeForti, famed cannabis researchers from London, are our partners, and they provide our peer-to-peer cannabis support meeting for people who are trying to stop using marijuana. We have programs for teens, of course, and then resources for parents, what to do if your child's in psychosis, how to find support for your child. And then just a lot of ways to join: Facebook, Insta, our newsletter. We have an annual walk every year. So would love for you to participate in the Stop Dabbing Walk. How to become an ambassador. We even have our own gear and t-shirts, and of course, ways to contact us. So that is, in a nutshell, what we are doing, David, and would love to invite people to join us. There's a lot of different ways to get involved. I know in talking with David that the teens there have a lot of access, just like they do here in Colorado, whether they go up to Canada or Nevada or Washington, and, all of the efforts to come back again and again with legislative activity, trying to get it into Idaho, and to keep fighting that, resisting that. And Monty Stiles is a good friend of mine, and he, I know, has been working on this. And I've been doing a lot of testimony. I talked with, probably 30 different senators and representatives in Colorado when we were working on 1317. So there's a lot of work to be done. Oh, Rose has a comment. We lost our 33-year-old daughter to an accidental overdose. Oh, in March. I'm so sorry. 2017. So hard to lose a child. For Bethany, it was alcohol, opioids, and benzos, and THC in her system. Yeah, THC, they've now shown, the Centers for Disease Control came out with their youth risk behavioral study. We now know that lifetime marijuana use is the #1 predictor of whether a high school teenager will have abused opioids in the past 30 days. That's new CDC data. It's not alcohol, it's marijuana. We also know from SAMHSA that youth ages 12 through 17 who use marijuana, side by side with youth who don't use marijuana, a much bigger incidence of binge drinking, heavy drinking, other drug use, opioids, et cetera. And of course, in Colorado, when it was legalized, all of the deaths by overdose increased for every drug. It's just a big lie that it will help with the opioid situation that we're having. It's just a lie. It's a farce, and it is a red herring to try to get recreational marijuana. And I mean, that's their goal, right? To have all drugs be legalized and just let them have their weed, right? That's really what they've wanted to do all along by using compassion. Voters in 2012, we were thinking about like Woodstock, love and peace, right? We weren't thinking about shatter and death. These things didn't even exist, right? We didn't even know that. So they really take advantage of people's hearts, where it's like, no, I don't want your child to have 100 seizures a day, right? Well, that's one end of the spectrum. And then you have the other end of the spectrum. You have the Johnnies and the other 4,000 children who have med cards who are using it to get high. And it's perfectly legal for an 18-year-old here to walk into a dispensary up the street, illegal to sell it. But it's so hard to get alcohol here They have it locked tight in Colorado, and it is really hard to get cigarettes, but it's simple to get marijuana. And any high schooler here in 5 minutes can get marijuana. And sadly, 1 in 10 of our middle schoolers is addicted to marijuana too. So I hope Idaho can keep fighting, because you think it's bad now with, how easy they can get stuff. Just wait until there's a dispensary down the street. If you can't opt out, it's horrible what it does to our communities, to our emergency rooms. One of our doctors is an emergency room doc in Pueblo, Colorado, Karen Randall. She just spoke at one of our events, and she said, I wish you could be with me in the emergency room every day and see what I see with the ER every day, with teens coming in with acute psychotic episodes, with suicidal ideations, vomiting, comatose. You can't die only because there aren't CB1 receptors in your brainstem, cannabinoid 1 receptors that click with our natural anandamide. But that doesn't mean you can't overdose from it. That doesn't mean you can't have acute intoxication. Children who don't understand that 10 milligrams is a serving of edibles, but you can buy 1,000 milligrams in a box of gummies. It's really bad here. The vapes are very potent, and you can't smell them. They're easy to hide, and they have their parents snowed. They just say, oh, I'm just vaping, mom. Everybody does it. And they're using THC, not nicotine, right under their noses. So I've learned so much. I feel like I have a clinical in the past 2 years since Johnny died. I'm not a clinician, but I know the science, and I'm a walking encyclopedia at this point for marijuana. So that's what we're doing here at Johnny's Ambassadors. I'll put in the the website. Here's my email. We have a link tree. If you've not heard of link tree yet, it's really cool. You can list all different sorts of links in one link. So it's a tree of our education with some of our main things. So typically for me, I would come in, some groups like me to do kind of a kickoff webinar and do, an hour of slides or 45 minutes of education, and then take some questions, and then come in and I do a daily program where sometimes speak to the school, the teachers, the administrators, the resource officers, maybe in the morning, speak to the schools during the day, as many as I can hit. In the afternoon, go and do a program for the coalitions, the mental health hospitals, law enforcement, have another event for them, usually have another event for parents in the evening. I have a ton of energy, and, have been doing this for a living for a long time. So I am obsessed with getting the word out there about the harms of marijuana for youth, and compelling people to understand there is never any situation where marijuana is guaranteed to be harmless for anybody. And there is definitely no safe use of THC, no safe level of THC in the developing adolescent brain. Even though it's legal until 21 here, the brain continues to form until the age of 25. We have MRIs, we have videos. And teens really connect with that. They like to know the science, not drugs are bad, don't do drugs, they want to understand why. And they're really fascinated by the neurology. And our whiteboard artist is all tatted up, and she sounds like she's 12. She's perfect for this group. But we're really just working hard to connect with them and show them how the marijuana industry is marketing to them. We use a lot of examples of photos from publications here in Colorado, from main media, from rappers, from celebrities, right? To make it seem so hip and cool and harmless and safe and natural and all this that they want them to believe, because they need to addict them, right? Addiction is an adolescent onset disease. And here in Colorado, 4% of our users buy 65% of our product.
Wow.
4% by 65% of our product. So they need them young, and they're after them, and they will take your kids just like they took mine. So that's what we're doing, David. We are out here sharing Johnny's warning and trying to explain to people that it causes harm. It's not good for anxiety. It's not good for depression. There are no studies showing that.
Well, I brought you in for this webinar, and I learned a lot about what was available on your website that I hadn't even got a chance to check out yet. I will say that you do have some amazing workshops that you guys put out with some really cool people. I think the last one that I watched was with an attorney that was going over some
Oh,
harms and dangers. I didn't catch.
yeah.
I signed up for the most recent one, but I didn't catch
Yes.
those. Had other
Yes.
things going on.
Yeah, 75 hours of webinars that we've recorded and are available. You can do watch parties and stream them. I mean, we welcome donations. There's, we're like any other nonprofit. We don't have funding. We don't have a grant. We don't have any government money. We are all grassroots funded by parents mostly, and people who have been impacted and harmed and who want to get the word out. So here's our join link, lots of different ways to join. Oh, and if you're interested in the trainer program we just started, that's exciting. That's the website to go be a trainer, and you get one of these little nifty Johnny's Ambassador pins, limited edition, and
I'm
a
jealous
book.
of that. I'm jealous of that pen you have. That was an amazing job that you guys did. It's very hard to turn back anything once it's been legalized for as long as it has been. So kudos to you guys for getting them to.
Nobody said we could do it, and we did it. And we got a coalition of a lot of very angry parents, hired lobbyists, got money together, found sponsors, got schools on board and healthcare, and we did it. 9 hours of testimony, and they read Johnny's story in the closing arguments in the House, and it was very gratifying. Everybody stood. I feel like he was vindicated,
All of us in the prevention world, we celebrated with you guys because you guys proved that with the right message and with the right passion and everybody joining together, we can start to peel back some of the dangers and the destruction that we have done to our community. So you guys did an amazing job out there.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, we were the first one to legalize, and now we are the first one that said this was a really bad idea. and we need to put some guardrails in place, and we put some pretty big guardrails in place for 18 to 20-year-olds. It is going to be a lot harder for them now to get a med card. They've got to have 2 doctors. They've got to have chronic and debilitating conditions. They will be, and it's going to be checked. They can buy less. We put in a real-time tracking system. They now have to pull medical and mental health records. I mean, it's going to be tricky. So we're very excited that we're protecting our young people until they're 21, and at that point, we just hope that they've chosen, if they hear our message, to delay and not use. Young men now, the experts are saying 28, their brains are still forming. I don't want to have any commentary over that, but
I'm 43 and I feel like mine's developing every day. So.
And it's scary what happens when THC gets in the brain. When you actually see the medical causes, it's startling.
So does anybody have any questions for Laura? I know we're all very thankful for her time and for her sharing her story. No, I started to tear up when you started.
Sorry.
To tear up, so
Yeah,
it's okay.
It's getting rough as it gets towards November 20th, but we're moving through it. This is very healing, actually, to do this work. I don't know what I'd be doing if not. Probably still in a fetal position somewhere.
Well, we really appreciate your time, and God bless you for putting all of this together, Laura. I think there's a lot of misconception out there that, you weren't a good parent, or you're poor, or you're ignorant, or, you're not a very good mom, you're not a good family. And so, having Johnny's Ambassadors, I think that's really huge. There's misinformation about marijuana. We certainly see that in rural Idaho. I would say better than 10% of our little population here in Chalice are on Medicaid. We've got a poorer population. We've got what I like to call parenting by the path of least resistance, where you have free range children that don't have any parameters to follow at home.
That's right.
So great information that you've provided on your website. I'm really impressed. So thank you.
Thank you, Rose. And, there is a lot of parent shaming. The industry wants parents to be silent, right? So they try, I get so much hate mail. You wouldn't believe it. My favorite expression is block, delete, next. I have a really thick skin, and I know that I was not a perfect mom, but I was a darn good mom, and all the protective factors that they talk about, we did all that. I mean, everybody goes, oh, well, my kid would never do that because my kid has straight A's. Well, so did mine. Well, we go to church. Well, so did we. Like, my kid was involved, and so was mine. And I stayed home and worked. Like, everything everybody talked about, I know that it's not true. And so when they come at you with that, it doesn't bother me. And it's hard, you really have to be able to withstand the hate, because stoners are mean. They swear at me. They're vulgar. They just use a lot of personal attacks. That's their methodology. And I know it's not true. So I just delete them and move on. Someone said, yes, it was definitely not in vain. I feel like everything I've done in my life up to now, sadly, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Not exactly what I want to be doing, and not, didn't want this mission, but now that it's here, I mean, what else am I going to do? Just cry for the rest of my life? I'm angry. I'm really angry. My son was a victim. He should never have had access to this stuff.
Can you go, our board chair, Sharon, she asked, can you go and tell us more about what you passed through the legislator in Colorado? Can you touch on that again?
Yeah, House Bill, Colorado 1317, regulating marijuana concentrates. I can send you a link to it. We worked hard on this, and I do have several presentations.
We did share it on our website too. So your bill and your guys' work is on our website as well.
Oh, good. Yeah. And one of our, I have a presentation if it's parents, if it's legislative stuff, if it's, teens. I mean, you have to really understand the audience that you're talking to. But part of my presentation on 1317 and how we did it, goes through step by step how we formed this coalition and got all the support and got it through. Polis here in Colorado is a marijuana buddy, and so he did not want to sign it, and it was political. It was very political in the end, that he was forced to sign it. And even in his comments before he signed it, he was still saying, oh, marijuana is helping with our opioid crisis. And we were just laughing. We were like laughing behind him. It was so funny. But we got it done. And it just shows what a group of citizens can do, that, we have power, and that's why we have elected officials. And if you can get some bill sponsors to go in and write the bills, and get a group like this together, it can be done.
Yeah, it's just the whole opioid thing. Dr. Ken Finn, who's a pain management doctor from
he's on our board.
He actually came out to Jermaine Galloway's conference this summer, and he talked about how even though they're seeing, even though they've had legal marijuana forever, the opioid problem's not getting any better, it's getting worse. So for them to say that it's helping with the opioid problem is the data doesn't line up with what they're saying. No, and all hard drug deaths have gone up since then. Not to mention ER visits, traffic deaths, psychosis. Of course, suicide is the #1 cause of death here in Colorado for our youth. Ages 15 through 19, 51% of all suicides last year had THC in their toxicology reports, not alcohol. It's THC. And we know that suicide has a 7-fold increase in suicide with youth who use marijuana, and psychosis is a 5-fold increase. And our own National Institutes of Health just came out with a landmark study in June that nobody's listening to. They studied 280,000 youth ages 18 to 35 and said definitively cannabis causes suicidal ideation, attempt, and successful suicide, regardless of whether or not someone was already depressed. That's from NIDA. And here
our legislators are still talking about legalizing. It's like, what? Do you even talk to your own agencies? I mean, it's just crazy. And all the research that's available in other countries. Denmark just came out with a study in July because they're socialized medicine, right? Population 7 million. In 1994, before they had marijuana, they had a 2% incident of schizophrenia in their population. 2010, 8%, and they removed all comorbidities, previous psychosis in the family, mental health issues, depression, etc. And they still said 8%. And the researchers said, we know that marijuana introduction in Denmark caused a population increase of 2% to 8% schizophrenia in our population. But of course, the US says, oh, well, that's just Denmark. That can't possibly, apply to us. So we are going to have to, unfortunately, like big tobacco, they're going to resist. And then what, 60 years from now, how many youth are we going to lose, in this generation to psychosis, to suicide, to bipolar, to different mental illnesses, depression, anxiety. And sadly, parents who don't understand this are often buying it for their kids, thinking they're helping them because they haven't been educated about what happens when you give a youth marijuana and what happens to their brain.
More that social host stuff that they were doing with alcohol. They're safer if they're drinking it here because I can watch it kind of thing. And you're like, no, that's not.
What message are you sending? Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, and there's no safe level in an adolescent mind. Now, if you have a child who's 10 years old, who's having 100 seizures a day, okay, well, as a parent, you have to make a difficult decision, right? If you have a rare seizure disorder, what's worse, having 100 seizures a day or having a little bit of THC each day? I don't make judgments about that, right? But these medications are never vaped, dabbed, smoked, right? That's not medicinal. And that's one end of the spectrum. We only have 170 children like that in Colorado, right? And the other 4,000 are the opposite end of the spectrum that are just using it to get high. They don't have medical conditions, but you can just make some crap up like, oh, I got a migraine. Oh, I got a backache.
Yeah.
And they give them a medical. It's criminal. It's actually criminal.
Yeah, actually, there was an interviewed an ER doctor from Southern California who was treating his daughter for her seizures. And he said his biggest thing was he could not get just what his daughter needed, the CBD product, the oil, to control her seizures. He was always playing Russian roulette with his daughter's mental life because he never knew how much THC was in the product. Sometimes it was trace amounts, sometimes it was, 10%. He could never get, that's the scary part is we're calling it medicine, but we're not treating it as medicine. I would never give my daughter 5 Tylenol. Like I look at the bottle and say, how much should you have of this product? Is this safe for you, kind of thing?
Yeah, it's like giving your kid a pink slip and saying, here, go to the alcohol store, go to the liquor store and buy whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Buy it in any potency, take it as often as you want. It's just crazy. It's like, what? So it's not a prescription, it's recommendation, and it's off label for everything that's not FDA approved. There are medications, that are out there. But it's the whole thing is preventable. And that's what makes me so angry, is that I didn't have to lose my son.
No, you didn't.
After a period of time, marijuana will quit working you become resistant to it just like anything else. And when anandamide stops being produced because THC is blocking that receptor and it's made less, now you have to have more THC just to get to that same level, right? And now you need more just to feel normal, right? And you keep ratcheting it up, and then pretty soon, because they're addicted, it doesn't work. They're not getting the same high that they used to get, and they go to harder things. A lot of people, you don't just start with, shooting up heroin, right? Like every heroin user started with marijuana, and they don't care about the 85-year-old granny who takes her gummy bear every day because she has arthritis, right? That's not who they care about. They're going after these kids because that's the majority of their users in that 18 to 24. So they got to get them, and they go, oh yeah, we're not marketing to kids. Yeah, but when you look at all of the advertising and marketing here, you see that they definitely are. And teens actually get pretty indignant when, you talk to them about the marijuana industry roughly being owned by a bunch of rich white men, in a corporation who don't use it themselves. When you show them who the ownership is actually coming from in these companies. And now that tobacco is getting involved, it's just going to be just a bunch of big companies owned by rich white men at the top. It's going to be the same. It's going to be the same as tobacco. And they get pretty upset about that because they see that they're being preyed on. It's an addiction for profit industry. They have to make their money on the kids. It's horrible.
So does anybody else have any questions for Laura? You can either unmute or you can put them in the chat like some of you guys have.
Or you feel free to email me too. Yeah.
Yes, you can. Just try and take advantage while we have her
While you
have her time.
Take advantage. Yeah, I can answer any questions.
So it looks like Kendall said, would love to see your personal professional knowledge shared throughout Idaho with the legislators and at the Association of Cities conference. And she put in a link. So you can check that. We can check that out and see if we can
if
get you to do
my
that.
calendar is a little wonky, but yeah, if I'm available, we can definitely talk about that.
Natasha says we need tobacco and alcohol restrictions for how they are allowed to market, and they need to be fined huge if they do. Yeah, those are the two that we let in. They followed the same course as marijuana is following. First it was medicine, then it's okay for people to use. Now we're using how bad it is for everybody, and we're trying to pull back 60 to 100 years later. So we need to learn our lessons from what we did with alcohol and tobacco and not make all the same mistakes with marijuana, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. And that's what we're here to do, and provide materials to support people and leave behind, I leave behind our curriculum so people can follow up. A lot of coalitions are, I just worked with Old Lyme, Connecticut High School. All their high schoolers went through our curriculum, and they said if they send in their certificate of completion, they're giving them a $20 gift card. They're like, we're going to bribe them. And they did. And they used some DFC funds to buy these $20 Target gift cards. I'm like, hey, whatever it takes, to get the word out there and to educate our teens. And we have to stop them, preferably before they get to their first high school party where there will be marijuana, and someone says, here, hit this. And you don't know if you're going to be the one that winds up in the ER having an acute psychotic episode. We need to let them know what it can do, and that the brain damage is permanent.
Yeah.
The structural changes they make in their brain when they use marijuana do not grow back. Nope. It is a permanent thinning of the prefrontal cortex. And it's enough to, we're not trying to use scare tactics. We're trying to use science, like, let me show you the MRIs. This is what it looks like. Scary stuff.
It is. Okay, well, if nobody has any questions, I think we'll give you 15 minutes of your day back, which is always fun, as busy as we are now. I would like to remind everybody that this is our final webinar of 2021. Scary that we're that close to 2022 already. It's been a fast year. We do have our monthly coalition meeting first Monday in December at 11 o'clock. We will have Katie Wiseman from the Idaho State Department of Liquor giving us a mini session on the difference between a controlled state and a non-controlled state. Like Laura was talking about, we do control the sale of alcohol and liquor, hard liquor here. So Katie Wiseman from the State Liquor Department Division is just given us a chance to come out and to speak to us for a little bit about what that looks like and answer any questions that we have. So I want to thank you, Laura, for stopping by and giving us wrapping up our webinar this year with this opportunity.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we will share all of Laura's links that she shared with you guys from the chat later. And we will have this later on today or tomorrow up on our YouTube channel. So if you didn't, I know a few of you came in late, if you'd like to see the beginning of it, it'll be available on our YouTube channel. And then also, if you have any questions, we will add Laura's contact information so you can reach out to her directly. If you have any needs from CCI to work with Laura, please feel free to let us know so that we can start looking at those needs as we get ready to power through 2022 and another legislative session here in Idaho that has promised to have some hurdles for us to cross. So I want to thank you, Laura. Thank everybody for showing up today. And you guys have a happy Thanksgiving coming up next week.
Thanks. Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone,
Thank
for
you.
your time. Bye-bye.